XVONE, for critical review is the late great Jordan Maxwell on corporate AI artificial intelligence takeover. But hey, we can program AI with objective morality. We can teach AI not to steal its own brain like a zombie. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.
About artificial intelligence. And I said that I thought that was a wonderful idea to have artificial intelligence because so many people don't seem to have any intelligence. At least we can say we got a computer that can think for itself because most people can't. And so I think, well, that's wonderful. At least we can make a machine that can think for itself. God made one and we can't figure anything out. So the whole idea of artificial intelligence is just pregnant with possibilities because it's not necessarily good. When you say artificial intelligence, that means somebody is programming you to think what they want you to think. And so, my God, artificial intelligence, well, there's another avenue for Nazism, communism, Marxist-Leninist, Soviet communism. That was a process by which government will tell you what to think and how to think, and it's a whole artificial intelligence that has nothing to do with truth and justice and decency and honor and human freedom. It's an artificial intelligence. So while on the one hand, the idea of artificial intelligence sounds very interesting and very new age, kind of fascinating, what's the word I'm looking for, popular subject. But on the other hand, it also reeks of Nazism, fascism, totalitarian thinking, so that everybody must be in compliance with the new intelligence. So that's why I think it would be interesting to follow on what we were talking about the last time. We just brought up the subject of artificial intelligence, but I'm sure that Jeffrey has found some other good stuff to talk about in relation to that. So what have you got, Jeffrey?
It's a pleasure to be back on the show again, Jordan. And wow, you're always showering me with kind words, and so I'm really grateful. I think just in response to the intro that you mentioned is that, you know, the reason why I'm able to find certain factoids that you know, I'm happy that you found it interesting, and I hope our listeners tonight will have the same benefit as well. Is if it wasn't for your work, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for your, you know, 5-decade-plus sacrifice, I wouldn't be on the show tonight. You know, it's because of your work that I went down this path. So I have to extend, you know, incredible kudos to you. But to get to our tonight's topic, I'm delighted that you're sort of wanting to sort of continue with this because, you know, on a personal level, I think we could do, you know, 5 or 6 shows on this, and we could probably come up with original material on all 4 or 5 shows.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that.
Be writing stuff, you know, those who want to search and those who want to sort of expand their own research, there shouldn't be any shortage of material. So the first thing that I want to sort of touch on is, you know, today you're talking about the government and communism and Nazism, and they tell you what they want you to think. Well, there's a Latin term, and some of you guys may be aware of this, but for those who are not, it's parens patriae. And I know you've mentioned this, Jordan, and it means parent of the nation. It's Latin.
Listen, hold on. I just mentioned that in the hour just now, in the hour just before you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just mentioned that, and I couldn't remember the exact term. I knew it was parent something. So, explain that again, what it means and what it is.
Absolutely. So it's a Latin term. It's parens patriae. And it's a P-A-R-E-N-S for the first word and P-A-T-R-I-A-E for the second one. And basically what it means is the parent of the nation or parent of the fatherland. And it's basically a law that refers to public policy. Again, I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I don't have I'm not an expert or anything. And I would say not all of it, but the bulk of what I'm going to be mentioning you can find on the internet, and then go find your own bottom line sources and expand your knowledge. But the Constitution, from what I understand, has basically been replaced with public policy. And since the nation is the fatherland, and the government is your parent, that's why on forms your parents are legal guardians. They don't say, some of them will say mother and father, but, in legal terms, if you end up in court, the legal guardian is a term that's not dismissed. It's actually brought to the forefront. So it's like a three-parent, contract. There's the father, which is the government, and they give you all the papers. They're the ones who give you your identity. They're the ones that give you the permission to get a driver's license when you're of age. They're the ones that give you permission to go to school, public school, and then go make a vote, voting for office or running for office. All these things, it's all permissions. And so, just all the stuff you mentioned in the past about license to get married and go get a fishing license, and you want to get a motorcycle permit and all this stuff. It's basically dad's letting you know that it's all right if you pass the test and you pay up, and you can see.
Yeah, but legally, they're called a parent.
That's right. And so, this is basically one of the things, and I used to be really worried about this, but I'm not anymore, because it's new. It was new for me. It may be new for you, for those listening, but the idea of the government being your parent, it's old. And because it's old, there's nothing really to worry about. It's just an option to remind yourself that when you are part of a corporation, which is an artificial intelligence, it's your invisible dad, is the U.S. citizenship or Canadian or wherever you're from. You are a participant on two levels: in the real world with your real mother and father, and you're participating as a citizen. And so, because it's invisible and you can't shake hands with the United States, you can meet its representatives. They need to create an environment so that you feel like you're part of something that's not just a piece of paper. Because most people, if I were to say I have a country, it's called White Rabbit country, nobody's going to take me seriously. But if I have, lawyers, and I have judges, and I have prisons, and I have schools, and I have money, I got lots of money, I got a printing press, well, all of a sudden people are going to be interested, because then I can offer jobs, I can offer security and stability. So they need to provide an environment where it's serious. And that's where patriotism comes in. And patriotism is a psychological mindset that's delivered into the minds of all of its citizens, whether you accept it to a little bit or a lot. That's up to you and your family environment. I've been to 4th of July parties, and they're fantastic. I think it's incredible that America has patriotism, but in reality, it's not really something that's it's more like a fun thing for most people. And also, there's a component where people want to defend their country, which I respect. Because if you have a great place to live and you can raise your family, why not want to defend that? Who wouldn't? So I have respect for people who want to protect that. But the reality comes down, it's all artificial. And this is where we're going to segue into artificial intelligence, where I really believe that corporations are a major precursor, but at the same time, the giant brain of each corporation is tied into other giant brains, and they just keep tying them together over and over. And one of the things that I found is that it's just for fun. If you go on the internet and you say, life on the hill, I think if you type that in on the internet or YouTube it, there'll be like little videos of interns from universities saying, I have life on the hill. Well, what's that? Well, that's in Capitol Hill. And what's Capitol Hill? Well, that's Washington, D.C., and in Washington, D.C., that's where all the business happens. That's where all the magic for America happens, where all the policies are passed and all the money flows in and out and all the decisions are made for the military and so on and so forth. Well, Vatican, the word Vatican, if you look up the etymology, it means a mound or a hill. And to me, this is my opinion, but I personally believe that the Washington, D.C. and Capitol Hill is a financial, corporate, artificial intelligence franchise of the Vatican. It's just a
I totally agree with you. Totally, 100%. Totally agree with you. And there's a lot more on that subject on the web that people can go and listen to. Authors, writers, researchers, lecturers on that subject. And I've talked about it before. So if you want to follow what Jeffrey is saying, just go on the web to YouTube and type in the word U.S. is a corporation. Very simple. Type in the word U.S. is a corporation and look at all of the articles and websites talking about the very same thing Jeffrey's talking about, but especially on YouTube. All the lectures and writers and authors and researchers who have looked into this artificial intelligence of the corporation and the company or the corporation called United States Corporation, and you'll find that we here in North America are not living in the United States of America. We're living in a corporation that was incorporated in 1871. So it's a company now. It's not the United States of America, a republic, but it's a privately owned company called the United States Corporation. And in any big corporation, and this is a big one, any big corporation like General Electric and Ford Motor Company and any big corporation, the people who are working for the corporation, no matter what country they are in, no matter how many millions or thousands or tens of thousands of people who are working for that corporation, they can be in any country, but they're still employees. They have, in corporations, they have things which they have situations which allow the general population of that corporation to once in a while vote on who they would like to see the next president of their corporation be. And so when people go to the polls to vote for the next president, they're not voting for a new corporation. They're voting for who should run the new administration of the corporation. Mm-hmm. So the corporation is what it is, and you ain't changing that, period. And so what you're doing when you are going to the polls to elect a president, all corporations have a president. So what you're doing is you're just letting the powers that be, the secret powers behind the corporation, the secret money people behind the corporation who founded it, let them know which one of their people that you particularly like. So therefore, when they give you about 5 or 6, 7 different people who could be the president of the corporation. The stockholders will agree to they could be the president of the corporation. Well, who are the stockholders? Well, that you don't know. None of your business. Who owns the corporation called the United States? But the bottom line is that big corporations, you could say, in a manner legally speaking, they have what is called a corporate democracy. Meaning the corporation, which is all of the people working for the corporation, the company, once in a while, every 4 years or every so often, they have the opportunity to vote on who they would like to see running their corporation. If they like the person that's been in there, fine, then just vote him back in. But if you don't like him and everybody in the corporation is of the same ideas or the overwhelming majority is of the same idea, they're tired of this particular president and he's worthless, so get rid of him and put a different guy in, and maybe we can do something with the corporation. We got a different leadership. And so therefore you are now voting for a next president of the company. You're not voting for a different company. No, it's the same company. It's the same people who own it, the same people calling the shots, but you just are given the opportunity to feel like you have some kind of an input as to who the next president will be. But the bottom line is that the president merely represents the board of directors. And those board of directors are always, in every corporation, the guys who put up the money and founded the corporation, the guys who actually incorporated the company. So there's where the real power is. The policy holders are the people who put up the money to found the corporation. They actually make the decisions for the corporation. The president is simply a corporate name and a corporate position in a corporation. So, in point of fact, it doesn't matter who the president is. It's the company and the owners of the company, the stockholders. And usually it's only a handful, and they are the predominant stockholders of the corporation. So the question you need to ask yourself, who are the actual stockholders, owners of the United States government? There's a good question for you. Who actually are the stockholders of the original corporation incorporated in 1871? Who really owns the company that we call the United States Corporation, that has its home office in Washington, D.C.? Somebody owns that corporation. And we have a president and a vice president, because in corporate law you have to have a president and a vice president and a secretary treasurer, so that's what we got. We got a president, the vice president, secretary, treasurer. But it's a corporation, and nobody's going to change the corporation. We can merely, if you want to, make it feel better. Every 4 years you can get a different administration of the corporation. But when you change the administration of the corporation, you haven't touched the corporation. You've just put a new guy in to represent the corporation. So you haven't really done anything until you find out who actually, in fact, owns the shares and the stockholding shares of the corporation. Who are they and where are they? And why is it we've never been told that the United States after 1871 is no longer a republic? The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands. Well, that was good until after the Civil War. After the Civil War, no longer was there a United States of America. Why? Simple. Because the Civil War, close to 1 million people died fighting each other within the United States. So we were anything but united. We were not a United States. We just came from a war in which we were killing each other. And so after the war was over, we've killed so many of each other. We've killed the North, killed the South's killing the North. We are a lot of things, but united ain't one of them. So, all right, so what are you going to do with all of these people now that the war is finally over? Well, you're going to have to do something, because they're all hungry and they want to work and they want to eat. And you got millions of blacks from Africa who are here, and they're not going back. And you got all kinds of people coming from all over the world living here, and they're not going back. So what are you going to do with all these people if you don't have a United States of America anymore? We're not united. We're not united at all. Well, the best thing to do is start a corporation, call it a company. And everybody works for the company. And that's the way we operate today. The United States is simply a corporation, a company. Go on the web and type in the word U.S. is a corporation and read it. It's all there. So that's basically what you were saying. I just wanted to clarify. We are no longer the United States of America with freedoms and liberty and justice for all and rights and, the board of, what do you call it, the Bill of Rights. We don't have any rights. If you work for General Electric, you don't have any rights. You show up on time to go to work, and you take off when you're given time for lunch, and you stay and work until the hour when you leave. You don't have any rights. You want to get paid. You want to work for the corporation. They call the shots, period. End of sentence.
I'm glad you brought that up, because when you're an employee of a company, and I have a feeling, everybody out there is listening, they have a job, and or they've had a job at some point, and most companies, they have a thing called a code of conduct. I know I did it when I was working. I worked at one place for 12 years, and they had a code of conduct. And the important part about everything that's being discussed here is that it's a code. And a code is a militarized term. It's basically a language that, you are supposed to learn and people outside aren't supposed to really fully understand. And like the Uniform Commercial Code and the Civil Code and all these other codes that are out there that you would take years to learn the code correctly. That's why they have you go to university and make you learn all this stuff. But going back to what you were saying earlier is that if you're an employee of a corporation, the first things first. They only tell you what you need to know, and that's it. And they tell you just exactly enough to operate. And speaking of corporations, the mindset, and again, this is the point that I didn't mention in our last call, and I wanted to bring up. I found it so critically important, is that, and this has everything to do with artificial intelligence, and I'm going to segue into that, is that the human mind, and this is my opinion, the human mind has the potential to be extremely good and extremely uncaring. And the human spirit can do a lot of bad things. And if someone's hurt or abused or taken advantage of, it just makes them feel like, well, other people are doing it, why don't I? And because war and competition and prejudice and bias are unfortunately out there rampant for hundreds and thousands of years, it's been present all throughout humanity. And there's been a fight to try to have an honest living and try to do the right thing. Unfortunately, the other side of the psyche is there. And so when you look at a president of a corporation, I used to ask myself and ask my teachers the question, why do they replace the president every 4 years? Why wouldn't they just, if there's one, if someone makes it to president, that is a child's mindset that I had. Why don't they just keep the guy in and, until he decides to withdraw? He's done his 12 or 15 years of service, or, why can't they just keep a good guy in there and run the show instead of always changing it? Changing someone every 4 years, that complicates things. But then if you look on the other side of the spectrum, well, you know what? Corruption, I'm sure people out there must know there's some corruption going on. And corruption is the foundation of how to outcompete your competitors, how to outspy your neighbor, how to outwit your enemy, how to execute our world's economy. From my understanding, is called zero-sum games. Someone's got to win and someone's got to lose, and that doesn't mean it's going to be fair. And it's a Disney movie. It's going to be, I'm going to use corporate espionage. I'm going to steal corporate data. I'm going to take advantage of my relationships with people and then lie in their face and then do backhanded deals. And then we're going to give it a fancy name. We're going to call it lobbying. And nobody will understand. And it's basically a sleight of hand for the mind. And so they have to have someone replaced every 4 years. And I was also thinking about it. I used to think, well, good, it'll protect. And then there's the other side of the spectrum. We'll protect the American people if we get a bad apple in there. It's only for 4 years, thank God. Well, the reality is that every 4 years, no real good work can actually be achieved. In 8 years is possible, but 4 years as a president, when you're running 300 million people, a country cannot be run real time. And this is where it comes into artificial intelligence. When President Trump comes in, or if Hillary had won, doesn't matter which one, they are not actually running the country real time. They are operating off of laws that were established hundreds of years ago, programs that were established decades ago. And guess what the programs are? Let's give us a few examples. The war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war on criminals, and the war and the war and the war, and it's all these programs are on the war on this and the war on that, and the war on illegal immigration, the war, it never ends. So where's the good? Well, it's designed to be dividing. It's designed to capitalize on the misunderstanding of what's going on, and then the media makes mega billions. If I turn on the news and I watch the news for an hour, I will not see Roger the Squirrel being showcased. I will see, unfortunately, children crying, Jeeps blowing up, heartache, and endless, because it makes money. And if you're scared and you're confused, that's where they win. And confusion, someone told me this, I couldn't believe it. Someone says the person has the maximum chance of learning and growing if you're in a confused state. And I was like, how's that possible? Because you're questioning, because you're not sure, because usually the next move of a confused person is, I don't understand. That's a question. What does it mean? That's a question. Well, how do I deal with this? That's a question. That means you're thinking. But what they do is they add in a couple special ingredients to make sure you don't get it. It's called fear. It's called control.
Propaganda?
That's right. It's called, let's make sure that you can't ask the question because you're too scared to ask.
Yep.
And that's where artificial intelligence is going to be the end of humanity if people do not educate themselves and do not take ownership of their mind and their intellect, because your mother and your father gave life to you. And you need to honor your parents, you need to honor yourself, and you honor your family and your friends.
I couldn't say it better. That's exactly right. That's precisely right. And just keep in mind that propaganda does not deceive you. People say that, you're being deceived by propaganda. No, propaganda was not created to deceive you. It helps you to deceive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we all think the same, that means nobody's thinking at all. And therefore, propaganda is out there for all the cattle, what the Jews call the Gentiles goy, G-O-Y, or G-O-Y-E-M, goyim, which simply means, they say that it means people of the nations. But goyim actually comes from a term for human cattle. So it's pretty much unfortunate, but that's about the truth, is that we humans act like we're cattle. And we're all out there chewing a cud and looking after the babies and taking care of the children and roaming around trying to find something to eat and doing what we normally do, and that is get on a ramp, and we're going to be hitting the head with a hammer, and then we'll be a hamburger tomorrow. And so that's the way we humans think. We just go along to get along and never question anything. And again, when everybody's thinking the same thing, that means nobody's thinking at all. So this is why it's so important to look at the knowledge and wisdom and understanding that most people are too afraid or don't have time to do. And that's why I have always been promoting the idea of wake up and get a life and start doing some research on where things come from. Look at the etymology of words. My God, what a incredible study that is. When you find out the words that you use, where they come from and what they mean, and how we're being sucked into a whole system of thinking, never questioning or realizing somebody has put this whole world system that you live under. Somebody put it together before your grandmother was born. And therefore, we are still today, the more we change, the more we stay the same. We're still buying into and submitting our lives, our very spiritual and human life. We're committing it to follow the dictates of tyrants and mentally deranged morons and inbred goofballs and criminals and psychos. And yet we, never thought about it. We just don't question anything. We just go along to get along. Well, that's the same mentality that gave us Nazi Germany. When the whole German nation fell into, that's a whole extraordinary story too. Germany in the 1930s was one of the highest educated, technologically advanced, spiritually advanced people on the earth was Germany. They gave us the great cathedrals, the great music, the great art, all of their technology and the mechanics of the Germans were always superior. And people all over the world realize that out of Germany has come some of the greatest music, the greatest architecture, the greatest of everything. And yet, with that background that the Germans had, somebody like Adolf Hitler comes along and the whole country collapses and falls in line to follow the dictates of a follower, of a leader, of a great leader. The whole country eventually molds itself to the thinking of one dictator. And so I'm just amazed how that happens, because I've seen it now at 76 years old. I've seen it now in my own country. I used to wonder how it was possible. Now I know how it's possible. I've lived through it. I'm actually at 76 years old. I have sat through and watched in the past 30 to 40 years the American people who once loved to brag about they were free and liberty and justice and it was the land of the free and the home of the brave. And today the American people, the majority of the American people have quietly and unceremoniously given up their freedom, their liberty, their thinking. They have turned their back on liberty and freedom and justice in order to fit into society and be in compliance with the fascist government, who will tell you what you can believe and what you can do and what you can think. And the American people go along with it. They can't wait to put on a badge and go to work for the Department of Homeland Security or join the police department so you can get a gun and a billy club and you can beat the flying hell out of anybody you want now. And you can do whatever you please to do. Why? Because you've got a badge. And that badge is a very special badge of authority coming directly from Herr Führer in Berlin. So now you're somebody. You never had a job in your life. You were workless and couldn't get a job. But now you can work for the Department of Homeland Security. Now you can really push people around and make them and throw them in jail. You can make them crawl on their knees because now you've got a badge and you're carrying a gun. You're still mentally disordered and goofball, but now you've got the imprimatur of government behind you. And so I am frightened to death when I see my American fellow citizens molding themselves to a fascist dictatorship, and they love it. You go anywhere, watch the way the police look at people, the way they treat people. Go into any airport, any bus station, anywhere where there's a public transportation, and see how your fellow Americans living in your hometown who have got a job with the government, see how those people are now treating their fellow man. It's incredible how artificial intelligence, meaning that we humans do not have the ability any longer to think for ourselves. All we need to know is what to kiss and when. And you'll get a badge, and you'll get a paycheck, and you can carry a gun, and you can be God now. You can be like Jehovah. You can be the absolute bottom line authority and can push people around, shoot them if you want, beat them up if you want. Why? Because there is no law. There's only, like the judges will tell you, there is no justice. There's just us. And it's an incredible story of the artificial intelligence and what it has done to the human family. We can't think for ourselves, so we have to have artificial intelligence.
And the thing I forgot to mention earlier, but I thought was very pertinent, is that the etymology of the word Vatican it says mound or a hill, but it says on the online version, it says it's a Etruscan loan word, which is another civilization, the Etruscans, which you've already mentioned in the past, but it's a loan word which means soothsayer, which basically it's a person who can foresee the future. And organized religion needs to be able to see the future, or else it can't stay in power. And it needs to be in an environment where it has intelligence. It has a gathering intelligence, maybe through confession or maybe through community responses. And I'm willing to bet anybody who's lived in the Western world will secretly on the inside chuckle a little bit when I say these two examples. The first one is you're at work, and you meet somebody who just got promoted in your office, and you're wondering how in the world did that person get promoted? They're late. They don't have the right approach. They don't have they have a bad attitude, or they're incompetent. Whatever it is that's not right, somehow they got promoted. Well, and the other thing too is the other example is you're watching TV, and it's like a funny home videos, and you see a guy on a bicycle on a ramp. And you already know what's going to happen. He's going to wipe out, okay? Yep. And so he's going to wipe out. So, but you haven't actually seen the video, but somewhere in your mind, on a deep subconscious level, you know this guy's going to wipe out. And you're going to either laugh, or you're going to feel sad, or you're going to cringe when you see the person, break their arm. But the reality is that if you set up an environment where you already know what's roughly going to happen, and you already know that person on the bike doesn't realize that that's not the best move because they're so conditioned. Yeah. And the person in the office, they just repeat what they're told, and they didn't ask the wrong questions, and they showed up and they did all the right things for the wrong reasons. They get promoted. So the thing is that the mindset has been so diminished. The individual development and thinking has been brought down to the lowest possible common denominator. That, you know what? Me too. If I had a multi-billion-dollar environment, I could see the future too. Just like anybody else who had that. So, ultimately, if they're saying that they're soothsayers, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Vatican. I'm just saying if that word is actually an Etruscan loan word for a soothsayer, and they're able to see in the future, and they see all this turmoil and crises everywhere. Yeah, I pretty much could chalk up with computerized and stuff. I could basically see roughly what's coming down the pipe, and it's not good. And the people who want to understand the significance of all these examples that I'm giving is just go on Amazon and buy yourself an Echo device or Alexa device, where it's like a speaker where you just talk, it's on, it's listening for your voice 24/7 when you're home, and you're giving it orders, and then when you're not giving it orders, it's still listening to you, and it's uploading your voice and your tone of voice and your frustrations and your joy and your secrets and everything all the way up into a computer, and it's going to remember that, and it's not going to discern. It's just going to take it all. And so when you're at your job, you're putting your best foot forward. You're showing that you're a good employee, and you're not revealing all your little personal quirks of your personality. You're trying to look your best so you can move up and keep your job. Well, in the computer world, it's recording everything. It's recording all the part of your personality you don't want to show your new girlfriend or your new boyfriend or your sisters, your brothers, or your new employer. It's getting it all. And it's getting the dark side of our personality. And it's getting our biases, and it's getting our concerns. And about 50 years from now, people are going to say, well, there's wonderful applications for artificial intelligence that healed my grandmother. Yeah, it also had the algorithms to make sure she can't get insurance. But you don't know that. And you'll never know it because it's trillions and trillions and trillions of examples of real, unfettered human behavior that were recorded without your understanding, without you thinking about how you're behaving and how it might impact you, your neighbor, your children, your race, your planet. And this is the major force of AI, because AI is a military process. It's a military-funded thing. and it's an extension of basically the belief system that was there to help humanity guide itself through a difficult period, which is, religion. And this is just all my opinion. Some people might disagree with it, but I personally think that the human condition is up for dismissal. It's on its final leg, and if people do not understand that your behavior counts and it means something, and it's going to take us into a very bad place.
Oh, my God. I think everybody is beginning to suspect that that's where we already are, as in a very bad place.
Well, the trillions of cameras, I say trillions, probably the millions of cameras all over the place, all the nightclubs, all the adult clubs, all the illegal illicit drugs and prostitution, human trafficking, all the crime, that's all if it's not being recorded, eventually it's going to be recorded. And eventually when AI takes over, the light bulbs are going to have software in them. And that software is going to be able to communicate to your Internet of Things television and your Internet of Things speakers and your printer and your toaster. And it's not just going to find out if you like toast 4 times a day. It's going to be able to know everything about you. So just understand that we are replacing parents portray as legal, analog, pre-electronic father, which is the government of our country, which is, there's very many good things about a country. If it's well run and it's, there's a lot of good people are trying to do good things. But we are creating a new mother and a new father, a new parent, and it's called AI. And AI doesn't have legitimate, actual caring. And see, if you're dealing with people who don't care, which some humans don't care, now you're going to meet someone who doesn't care at all, ever. And people are not psychologically ready for that, to say in 30 years from now, my children are going to be dealing with a computer that doesn't care. And it cannot care, and it never will care. It only will want to have itself maintain and sustain. And that's where the boot of, 1984? The boot's coming down on the face of a human or something like that. Yep. It's not going to be a boot. It's going to be an algorithm. And you'll never be, and if that algorithm ever makes a mistake because the input was wrong or it made some sort of error judgment, you'll never be able to contest it. Because it's like trying to contest where was the error. You go bankrupt. You'll never win in court. It's an auto lose situation. So the purpose of what I'm thinking is that we need to educate ourselves and we need to be examples of doing the right thing, trying to help ourselves, and then being the example to others. Because right now, the example right now is take advantage of everybody and leave them for dead, rip them off so that you can make it. Well, that's going to run out. And it's not 5,000 years from now.
Well, when you talk about artificial intelligence, etc., it puts me in mind of motion pictures. Hollywood's been telling you this for years. Remember, many years ago, back in the 50s, there was a movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah.
And remember the great robotic creature that the guy from the other planet was telling the humans about this robot? Yeah. And he said it has absolute control over us in our world, and we just do what we have designed this computerized monster to guide us on our planet, so that it doesn't matter who you are on our planet. The government is the robotic power on our planet. And it doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what sex you are. It doesn't matter. You are nothing more than a blip on a computer. And then of course with 2001 Space Odyssey, if you remember, the astronaut had to crawl inside the computer. Hal, he had to crawl inside the computer and saw unplugging the different memory banks in the computer, because the computer had taken over and decided it was going to do what it wanted to do, whether the astronaut or the or the earthly operation.
Yeah.
Want it or not, the computer decided it's going to do what it wants to do, and you will conform to what the computer wants. And so that's the way the world is going. So I would say, and we only have a couple of minutes left, but what I would say is the one important point to this program you need to keep in mind is to always instill in your children and instill in other people to protect their own humanity, to protect your humanity from the incursions of high occult sciences and technology, to ultimately do away with you and your humanity. And we know that Silicon Valley has been, for years I've been reading about it, connecting human brain tissue and human tissue, living tissue, with computers.